Compound interest doesn't work like a light switch that flips on the moment you open a brokerage account. It works more like pushing a boulder up a hill. For a long time, you're doing almost all the work, sweating, straining, seeing almost no momentum. And then something shifts. The hill levels out. The boulder starts moving on its own. And eventually, that boulder is rolling so fast you can barely keep up. The question is, where exactly is that point? What is the actual number, the real savings threshold, where compound interest stops feeling like a scam and starts feeling like a superpower? That's exactly what we're going to break down today, with real numbers, real math, and a framework you can actually apply to your own situation right now. Why compound interest feels like a lie. At first, let's start by being honest about something the financial world doesn't love to admit. For most people, in the early years of saving and investing, compound interest is almost invisible. You open your index fund account, you put in $500 a month, and at the end of year one, you've contributed $6,000. If the market returns 7% annually, your interest earned is somewhere around $210 for the year. $210. That's one nice dinner. That's not freedom. That's not life-changing. That barely registers. And this is where so many people quit. Not because they're lazy, not because they don't care about their financial future, but because the feedback loop is so slow, so quiet, so underwhelming in the beginning that it genuinely does not feel like it's working. You are essentially trusting a process that gives you almost no emotional reward for years. The brutal reality of compounding is that it is deeply, aggressively backloaded. The math is designed to give you very little in the beginning and an almost incomprehensible amount at the end. Most people only ever experience the beginning. That's the real reason so few people build real wealth. Not lack of knowledge, not lack of income, but lack of patience to push through the phase where compound interest is still warming up. The math nobody shows you. Side by side. Let's put some real numbers on the table so you can see exactly what's happening at different stages. Imagine you invest $10,000 and you never touch it. You earn an average of 7% per year, which is a reasonable conservative estimate for a diversified stock market portfolio over the long term. In year one, you earn $700. Okay, not exciting. In year 5, your account has grown to roughly $14,000. You've earned $4,000 in total gains without adding a single cent. Still not mind-blowing. In year 10, you're sitting at about $19,600. Almost double, starting to feel real. In year 20, that $10,000 has become $38,700, nearly 4 times your original investment. In year 30, it becomes $76,000, 7.5 times your money. In year 40, $149,000, nearly 15 times, from a single $10,000 investment. Now here's what's important. Look at the acceleration of those gains. From year 0 to year 10, you gained about $9,600. From year 10 to year 20, you gained another $19,000. From year 20 to year 30, you gained $37,300. From year 30 to year 40, you gained $73,000. The same 10-year windows, wildly different amounts of growth. The last decade produced 8 times more wealth than the first decade, from the exact same starting investment with no additional contributions. That is compounding doing its job. That is the boulder cresting the hill and rolling on its own. The threshold concept, where the shift actually happens. So, where is the magical threshold? The honest answer is that it's not one single number. It's a combination of 3 factors working together. But there is a specific range where most people experience the psychological and financial shift from "this feels pointless" to "this feels unstoppable." That range is approximately $25,000 to $50,000 in invested assets. Here's why that range matters. Below $25,000 invested at 7%, your annual return is under $1,750. That's less than $150 per month from your investments. For most people, that doesn't even feel real. It doesn't change your day-to-day life in any visible way. You are still the one doing all the financial heavy lifting. But once you cross that $25,000 threshold, something starts to shift. At $25,000, you're generating $1,750 a year in returns, nearly $5 per day every single day, whether you work or not. At $50,000, you're generating $3,500 per year, nearly $300 per month, automatically, passively, without you lifting a finger. And here's the psychological effect that changes everything. Once your investment account is producing enough return each month to be noticeable, once you can look at your account and see it genuinely growing in ways that feel meaningful, the entire emotional experience of saving shifts. You stop feeling like you're sacrificing. You start feeling like you're building something. The acceleration zone, $50,000 to $200,000. Once you cross $50,000, you enter what I'd call the acceleration zone. This is where compounding starts to outpace a lot of your monthly contributions and where the boulder really starts to build momentum. At $50,000 earning 7%, you're adding $3,500 per year from returns alone. If you're also contributing $500 per month, $6,000 per year, your investment returns are now adding more than half the value of your contributions. You're getting leverage on your discipline. At $100,000, you're generating $7,000 per year in returns. That's nearly $600 per month from your investments alone. For many people, that number starts to feel genuinely significant. That's a car payment. That's groceries for the month. That's a flight somewhere. The money is producing real, tangible amounts that relate to real-life expenses. At $200,000, you're generating $14,000 per year. That's over $1,100 per month, a significant slice of what many people need to cover their basic expenses. You're now in a position where, if you lost your job tomorrow and needed to stop contributing entirely, your investments would still be growing by over $1,000 a month on their own. That is a different financial life than most people ever experience. The journey from $50,000 to $200,000 is where most people feel the compound interest click, where the abstract idea they read about in personal finance books becomes viscerally, undeniably real. The rule of 72 and what it tells you about your timeline. There's a quick mental math tool called the Rule of 72 that every investor should have tattooed in their brain. It's simple. Divide 72 by your annual rate of return, and that tells you how many years it takes for your money to double. At 7% returns, 72 divided by 7 equals roughly 10 years to double. At 8%, about 9 years. At 10%, about 7 years. Why does this matter? Because once your money is in that acceleration zone, say at $100,000, and you know it doubles roughly every 10 years, you can see the future in a completely different way. $100,000 today, $200,000 in 10 years, $400,000 in 20 years, $800,000 in 30 years, $1.6 million in 40 years, from a single $100,000 milestone, with no additional contributions. That is the compounding machine running at full speed. Now imagine you're also still contributing. Imagine you're adding $500 or $1,000 per month on top of that growing base. The numbers become genuinely staggering. This is why reaching that first $100,000 milestone is so often called the hardest money you'll ever save, because every dollar after it works harder than any dollar you saved before it. The contribution trap. Most people fall into. Here's a mistake that costs people years of compounding power, and it's incredibly common. Most people treat their investment contributions as fixed forever. They set up an automatic transfer of $200, $300, maybe $500 per month, and they never change it. The problem is that inflation eats the value of fixed contributions over time, and more importantly, your capacity to contribute almost certainly grows faster than your contributions do. People get raises, they pay off loans, they finish paying for things, cars, furniture, various life expenses that free up cash flow. And they pour that extra money into lifestyle upgrades instead of investment contributions. Every time you get a raise and don't increase your investment contribution, you're slowing down your timeline to reach the critical thresholds we talked about. Every time you pay off a loan and don't redirect that payment to your portfolio, you're missing a window that never exactly comes back. The investors who hit 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 the fastest are almost always the ones who treat their contribution rate as dynamic, something they actively increase as their income and cash flow grow. Even small increases matter enormously. Going from $500 per month to $700 per month in contributions seems modest. But over a 20-year period, that $200 difference compounding at 7% is worth over $100,000 additional dollars. $200 a month, $100,000 extra in 20 years. This is why the most powerful financial habit isn't just automating your investments. It's setting a calendar reminder every 6 months to review your contribution amount and ask, can I increase this by even a small amount? What happens after you cross 200,000? Let's talk about what life looks like on the other side of the $200,000 mark, because this is where compounding becomes something close to surreal. At $250,000 invested at 7%, you are generating $17,500 per year in returns. That's almost $1,500 per month from your portfolio alone. For many people, that covers rent, that covers food, that covers a car payment and utilities. You're generating a meaningful fraction of a full income from money that is simply sitting in an investment account, doing nothing but existing. At $500,000, you're at $35,000 per year in returns, nearly $3,000 a month. That's real income. That's the beginning of what some financial frameworks call coast mode, where even if you stopped contributing entirely, your portfolio is generating enough growth to eventually reach full financial independence without another dollar of contribution from you. At $1 million, the milestone that sounds impossible to so many people in their 20s and early 30s, you are generating $70,000 per year in returns at 7%. The average U.S. household income is somewhere in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. You have built a machine that generates the equivalent of an average American income every single year automatically, without you having to work a single hour to earn it. That is what compound interest actually looks like when it's fully operational. That is what you're building toward every single month you contribute and stay disciplined. The psychological game. Nobody prepares you for the math of compound interest is actually the easy part to understand. The hard part is managing your psychology through the long early phase where the numbers feel insignificant. Here's what actually helps. Stop measuring your progress by the dollar amount of your returns. In the early years, that number will be too small to inspire you. Instead, measure by 2 other metrics. First, measure your invested assets as a percentage of your target threshold. If your goal is to reach $50,000, the point where compounding starts to feel real, and you're at $20,000, you're 40% of the way there. That's meaningful progress. Frame it that way. Second, measure your annual return in terms of hours of work it represents. If you earn $25 an hour and your portfolio generated $1,200 in returns this year, that's 48 hours of work your money did for you. That's over a full work week. That's time you didn't have to sell. Framed that way, even modest early returns feel significant. These mental reframes don't change the math, but they change your relationship with the process, and staying in the process is everything. The single biggest variable in the compound interest equation isn't your rate of return, isn't your contribution amount, isn't even your starting capital. It's time, and time is only available to you if you stay in the game long enough to collect it. Building the bridge from where you are to the threshold. So, how do you get there? How do you build the bridge from wherever you're starting today to that $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 threshold where the magic becomes undeniable? The framework is straightforward, even if the execution takes patience. Step 1. Get clear on your current number. Not your net worth, not your cash savings, your actual invested assets. The money in index funds, ETFs, retirement accounts, whatever investment vehicles you're using. That number today, right now. Step 2. Calculate your current monthly contribution. What is actually going into investments each month on a reliable, consistent basis? Step 3. Run the projection. At your current contribution rate and an assumed 7% annual return, how long does it take you to reach $50,000? $100,000? Plug these numbers into any free compound interest calculator, they're everywhere, and see your actual timeline. Step 4. Find the gaps. Where can you increase your contribution even slightly? What expenses are temporary? Loans you'll pay off, subscriptions you can cut, that can be redirected to investments the moment they free up. Step 5. Protect the timeline. The biggest threat to compounding isn't a market crash. Markets recover. The biggest threat is you pulling money out early, stopping contributions during a rough month, or deciding to delay starting until things feel more certain. They will never feel more certain. The best time to be invested was yesterday. The second best time is right now. The last thing you need to hear. Compound interest is not a myth. It is not a trick rich people use to give middle-class workers false hope. It is genuine, mathematical, provable, and it works exactly as advertised. But only if you give it what it needs, which is time and consistency. The threshold where it starts to feel real is somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 for most people. The threshold where it starts to feel powerful is somewhere around $100,000. The threshold where it starts to feel like genuine financial freedom is somewhere around $250,000 to $500,000. And the threshold where it replaces your income entirely is personal. It depends on how you live and what you need, but it is reachable by far more people than ever actually reach it. The gap between people who build wealth through compounding and people who spend their lives wondering why it never worked for them is almost never income. It is almost never intelligence. It is almost always this. The people who build wealth stayed in the game through the slow, invisible, unrewarding early years. They did not mistake slow for broken. They kept pushing the boulder up the hill, even when it felt pointless, even when the returns felt insulting, even when life offered 1,000 good excuses to stop. You now know where the hill crests. You know what the numbers look like at every stage. You know what you're building toward and why it's worth the patience. The only question left is whether you'll still be pushing that boulder 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. The math will do the rest.